Imagine the best meal you have ever eaten. Now imagine taking a single bite of it in space and tasting almost nothing at all. It isn't the food. The recipe is identical, cooked exactly the same way it was on Earth. The problem is you, because the moment you leave the planet, something strange happens inside your body that quietly switches off most of your sense of taste, turning the best steak in the world into a warm mouthful of cardboard. And that's before you've even dealt with the other problem. Up here, your dinner refuses to hold still. It drifts up off the plate, out of the bowl, away from your fork, and if you're not quick enough, your meal will literally escape across the room and you'll be chasing it down before it reaches a vent, an eye, or the back of a $200 million control panel. Eating, the most ordinary thing you do all day, 3 times a day without a single thought, becomes, in space, one long, strange fight. So how do astronauts actually pull it off? Start with the most basic problem. There are no plates. There can't be. Put food on an open plate in orbit and it doesn't sit there politely, it drifts off piece by piece into the air. So nearly everything an astronaut eats comes sealed in a pouch or a can, and the tray they eat from is strapped to their leg or clipped to a wall, each container held down with Velcro or elastic. Set your fork down for 1 second without securing it, and it's gone, floating away, to be found hours later stuck to an air filter across the module. Eating itself becomes a skill, and the trick is a stickiness. Wet, sticky foods, oatmeal, stew, anything with a thick sauce, actually cling to a spoon through surface tension, so an astronaut can lift a spoonful to their mouth and it stays put, even upside down. Dry, crumbly food is the enemy, which is why, decades ago, engineers made one of the most important food decisions in the history of spaceflight. They banned bread. A single slice sheds crumbs, and one floating crumb can drift into an eye, a nose, or a piece of delicate equipment. So bread was replaced with the humble tortilla. Soft, foldable, long-lasting, and best of all, almost completely crumb-free. Astronauts have been eating tortillas in orbit for decades. They are the unsung hero of the space kitchen. Even seasoning had to be reinvented. You cannot sprinkle salt or pepper in space. The grains would simply float away and end up in someone's eye, or an air vent. So salt comes dissolved in water and pepper suspended in oil, both squeezed out as careful liquid drops from tiny bottles. The simplest gesture at any dinner table on Earth, reaching for the salt, becomes, up there, a small act of engineering. And now, that strange twist from the beginning. Remember how the food doesn't taste right? Here's why. In zero gravity, with nothing pulling the body's fluids downward, they shift upward instead, pooling in the head and the sinuses. The result is that most astronauts spend their first days in orbit, and sometimes their entire mission, feeling as though they have a permanent, mild head cold, stuffy and congested. And because so much of taste is actually smell, a blocked nose means bland food. Meals that were delicious on Earth suddenly taste like almost nothing. This is exactly why astronauts crave intense flavors up there. Spicy sauces, strong spices, and above all, hot sauce, which crews go through at a genuinely remarkable rate. One dish in particular has become legendary aboard the station: shrimp cocktail loaded with an eye-watering amount of horseradish, prized specifically because it is one of the few things strong enough to punch through the fog and actually taste like something. So what's actually on the menu? A lot of it begins as dried food. To save weight, the water is removed before launch, and astronauts simply add it back, using a special water gun that injects hot or cold water into a sealed pouch, turning a flat packet of powder into a hot meal in minutes. Other foods are pre-cooked and sealed in pouches, a little like military rations that just need warming. There's no oven and no stove up there, only a small food warmer, essentially a heated briefcase, to bring a meal up to temperature. And every single gram is fought over. Each crew member needs roughly 3.5 pounds of food a day once you count all the packaging, and every ounce of it has to be launched into orbit at tremendous cost. So nothing is wasted. Leftover packaging is compacted and stored, portions are carefully planned, and the crew are disciplined about never letting food spoil. Because up there, the nearest grocery store is quite literally a rocket launch away. And here's something most people never think about. There's no kitchen fridge. Everything an astronaut eats has to survive for months at room temperature without spoiling, which means nearly all of it is dried, canned, or specially sealed. fresh food does arrive. Every time a cargo ship docks, it often carries a small, precious stash of fresh fruit and vegetables. But it has to be eaten within days before it goes bad. To an astronaut, a fresh apple or orange floating up from Earth is treated like a genuine delicacy, savored slowly because they know it won't come again for weeks. Even coffee is a project. You can't pour it, so it's sipped from a sealed pouch through a straw. Hardly the cozy morning ritual it is back home. For years, that was the only option, until someone finally sent up an espresso machine built specifically for orbit, along with a specially shaped cup that uses the physics of surface tension to let astronauts drink almost normally, watching the coffee climb the walls of the cup toward their lips. Long before they ever launch, astronauts visit a food lab on the ground and taste test dozens of options, scoring each one, slowly building a personal menu for their entire mission. They're also allowed a small number of bonus containers, personal favorites, and comfort foods from home, packed just for them. For someone about to be sealed inside a metal can for 6 months, that one familiar snack, that single taste of home floating up on a cargo ship, can matter more than almost anything else on the manifest. But for all its awkwardness, mealtime is one of the most important parts of the day. Not for the food itself, but for what it does. Dinner is when the whole crew comes together, floating in a loose circle, and for a little while, it feels almost like home. Astronauts from different countries trade dishes from their homelands. They mark holidays with special meals sent up just for the occasion. In a place engineered down to the very last bolt, a shared meal is one of the few things that still feels genuinely human. It wasn't always this pleasant. The earliest astronauts ate genuinely grim food. Savory paste squeezed from aluminum tubes like toothpaste, and dry chalky cubes coated in gelatin to stop them from crumbling apart. It was fuel, not food, and nobody enjoyed it. In fact, one of the most famous meals in all of space history was an act of quiet rebellion. On an early mission in the 1960s, an astronaut smuggled a real corned beef sandwich on board, tucked into his suit. He pulled it out mid-flight as a surprise for the crew. But in zero gravity, the crumbs instantly began floating everywhere, and he had to stuff it away fast. That single smuggled sandwich caused such an uproar back on the ground that it was talked about for years and helped shape the strict food rules that came afterward. And that's the quiet strangeness of eating in space. Down here, a meal is the most ordinary thing in the world. You pile food on a plate. You taste every single bite. You never once chase your dinner across the room or squeeze your salt out of a bottle. You take it completely for granted that gravity will hold your food still and that your own nose will let you enjoy it. 400 kilometers up, someone is anchoring a pouch to their knee, injecting water into a bag of powder, drowning it in hot sauce just to taste anything at all, and snatching a stray drop of juice out of the air before it can drift away. And still, when the crew gathers to eat together, floating in a circle with the whole Earth turning silently outside the window, they will tell you it is one of the very best parts of the day. So the next time you sit down to a meal that actually tastes like something, on a plate that actually stays where you put it, notice it. It's a small miracle, and you get to enjoy it 3 times a day.